5 o'clock, Grammy-nominated music producer Tay Keith has died. Right now, Metro Police are investigating how he died.
They say the family called police for a welfare check at his apartment this afternoon. He's best known for co-producing for Travis Scott, Drake, Eminem. In December of 2018, he earned his bachelor's degree from MTSU. He was nominated for Best Rap Song for his work on Travis Scott's Sicko Mode at the 61st Annual Grammy Awards. Tay Keith was just 29 years old.
Hip-hop has just lost one of the most influential sounds of the modern era. Tay Keith, the mastermind behind some of the biggest rap anthems of the past decade, has reportedly passed away at only 29 years old, and the entire music world has been shaken by the news. We're talking about the producer who helped create the energy behind Sicko Mode, the same producer behind Non-Stop, the same creative force responsible for Look Alive, and the person who helped push Memphis production into the global spotlight like never before. And right now, artists, producers, and fans across the culture are reacting with shock, heartbreak, and disbelief, because this wasn't just another producer. This was someone who changed the sound of an entire generation. Behind the legendary producer tag that millions recognize, Tay Keith, this the one. There was a real person with a story that many people never got to hear. A story about his beginnings, the grind that took him from a young kid with a dream to one of the most respected names in hip-hop, and the final moments before the world lost a talent way too soon. And today, we're breaking down that entire journey. Yo, what's good, everybody? Today, we're taking a deep look into one of the most emotional stories the hip-hop community has faced in recent memory. Tay Keith is gone, just 29 years old. Reports say he was found unresponsive inside his Nashville apartment on June 18, 2026, after a welfare check conducted by Metro Nashville Police. Authorities have stated that foul play is not suspected at this time, with the official cause of death still awaiting confirmation from autopsy results. And just like that, one of the architects behind the sound of today's rap generation is no longer here. The response from the hip-hop world came instantly. The messages were emotional, personal, and filled with respect for a man who left a massive impact. So today, we're going through everything: his early life, his rise, his influence, his legacy, and how the people closest to him are dealing with this heartbreaking loss. Let's get into it. Before we continue through this story, let's clear something up. Since this news came out, there has been a lot of information spreading online, and we're going to separate what's real from what's just rumors, because Tay Keith's legacy deserves the truth, not confusion. To understand why this loss feels so heavy, we have to start at the beginning and look beyond the famous name people see in the credits. Most fans know the producer tag, the hits, and the records, but very few know the journey of how Bratavius Lakeith Chambers went from a young kid with a piano in South Memphis to becoming one of the most recognizable producers of his era. And trust me, that journey tells a story that is impossible to ignore. September 20th, 1996. That was the moment where this story began. Born and raised in South Memphis, Tennessee, Bratavius Lakeith Chambers entered the world in a place filled with musical history, culture, and influence that shaped generations of artists. But don't get it twisted, Memphis is not just another city in the South. Memphis is the foundation of American music. It's the birthplace of blues, a city that helped shape soul, and a place that created a hip-hop sound so unique that nobody can copy it, fake it, or recreate the feeling. 3-6 Mafia came from Memphis. 8-Ball and MJG came from Memphis. The dark production, the heavy drums, the eerie melodies, and those deep emotions that hit you before you even realize what you're listening to. That's the Memphis sound. And that was the environment Bratavius grew up surrounded by from the very beginning. But here's where the real story starts. Growing up in South Memphis was never an easy road. This is not a place that simply hands success to anybody. This is a city that challenges you, pressures you, and finds out who is really built to survive. And the people who escape that pressure and make something from their talent alone, those are the ones who are truly different. From the beginning, everyone around Bratavius could tell that music wasn't just something he liked, it was something he was connected to. Not because it was the easy choice, not because someone pushed him into it, but because the ability was naturally there. the kind of gift that cannot be taught or forced. By the time he was around 14 years old, he was already deep into Fruity Loops, the software that would become the starting point for so many producers, teaching himself how to build music from the ground up. No expensive classes, no industry connections, just a young kid from South Memphis with a computer, curiosity, and a hunger to understand every detail behind the sounds he loved. And honestly, that's the difference between people who dream about making it and the people who actually do. Because plenty of people open up FL Studio, but very few are willing to spend countless hours breaking down drums, studying melodies, rebuilding songs just to understand the formula, and putting their own work online before anybody even knows their name. But that was exactly what young Bratatavius was doing. He had a piano in his house where he would recreate songs that inspired him, including his own version of Lil Wayne's Lollipop, studying every note and every layer to understand why the record worked. He was uploading beats to YouTube and sharing music on DatPiff, which for anyone who followed hip-hop back then knows it was one of the biggest platforms for mixtapes and underground artists before streaming completely changed the game. This teenager was putting his creations into the world at just 14 years old, with no guarantee of success, no major cosign, and no promise that anyone would even listen. He did it because making music was something he simply couldn't walk away from. Now let me show you how the next major chapter of his journey started, because this is where the story takes a serious turn. When Tay Keith moved to the Raleigh area of North Memphis during his teenage years, he met a young rapper named James Baker, better known today as Block Boy JB. These two were almost identical in age, both born in 1996, both coming out of Memphis, and both carrying the same hunger to turn their passion into something bigger than themselves. They connected quickly and started creating music together almost right away. And that partnership, that bond between two young artists chasing the same dream, would become one of the most important relationships in both of their lives, not only from a career standpoint, but from a personal level too. We'll get back to that when we talk about the reactions after the news, because the message Block Boy JB shared after Tay Keith's passing carried a different kind of emotion. But before the fame, before the major records, there was years of non-stop work behind the scenes. Tay Keith was sharpening his signature sound during that time, those powerful 808s that hit your chest before your ears even catch up, those dark piano melodies that carried the pain, struggle, and intensity of Memphis, those sharp hi-hat patterns that made every beat feel like something massive was about to happen. He was creating a connection between the Memphis style that raised him and the trap movement that was taking over mainstream hip-hop in the mid-2010s. And while building that sound, he was also attending Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro, studying media management. Because Tay Keith wasn't only focused on making beats, he was thinking bigger. He was thinking about the industry, ownership, and creating something that could survive beyond one viral moment. In 2015, he received one of his first major cosigns. Major opportunities when he connected with Black Youngsta for the Everybody mixtape, producing a track that helped introduce his name to a wider local audience and started opening doors. But the real turning point, the moment that completely changed the direction of his career, came in 2018. Because 2018 wasn't just another successful year for Tay Keith. It was the year a young producer from South Memphis went from grinding quietly to becoming one of the most talked about names in hip-hop production almost overnight. It all started with Block Boy JB, his day one collaborator. The two had already been building momentum together through records like Rover and Shoot. Block Boy JB was gaining attention locally and online, especially after Shoot created a viral dance movement that pushed Memphis back into the spotlight. But then came February 9th, 2018, the day Look Alive arrived. Block Boy JB featuring Drake, with production completely handled by Tay Keith. And that beat was different. That simple but unforgettable piano melody, dark atmosphere, and explosive 808 combination created a sound that grabbed people instantly. It didn't need weeks to grow on listeners. It connected immediately. In cars, in clubs, through phone speakers everywhere.
Drake had already been paying attention to what was happening, and when he jumped on the record, everything changed. Because when Drake attaches his name to a rising movement, the entire world starts watching. Look Alive reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming Blockboy JB's first top 10 record and Tay Keith's first major top 10 production credit at only 21 years old. But here's the crazy part. That wasn't even the biggest moment of his 2018 run. That was only the beginning. Later that same year, Tay Keith helped create Nonstop for Drake, which climbed to number 2 on the Hot 100. He also co-produced Sicko Mode for Travis Scott, a record that reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and he worked on Not Alike with Eminem. Think about that for a second. Drake, Travis Scott, Eminem. Multiple chart-topping moments, all in 1 year, at just 21 and 22 years old. That type of run is something many legendary producers spend decades chasing, but this kid from South Memphis was already doing it before he was even old enough to rent a car without extra restrictions. Now we have to talk about something that many people outside the culture don't fully understand: the power of Tay Keith's producer tag. That signature "Tay Keith, fuck these" sound that appeared before his beats became one of the most recognizable identities in modern hip-hop. And it wasn't only producers or people inside the music industry who noticed it. Regular fans who couldn't name a single person behind a beat still knew exactly what was coming the second they heard that voice. That level of recognition is extremely rare. That type of influence is something most producers spend their entire careers chasing and still never reach, no matter how many successful records they create. Because the reality of this industry is the producers are usually hidden behind the scenes, while the artists get the spotlight, the billboards, and the recognition. But Tay Keith changed that entire formula. He made his name impossible to ignore. And what makes the story even crazier is that the same month Sicko Mode pushed him into Grammy conversations, December 2018, was also the month he walked across the stage at Middle Tennessee State University and earned his bachelor's degree in media management. Really think about that for a second. While the Recording Academy was recognizing his work as one of the biggest producers in rap, he was also finishing the education he started. He was flying to New York for studio sessions, recording with major artists, then catching flights back home just to make sure he was ready for exams. He even talked about those moments himself, taking overnight flights from New York, getting a few hours of sleep, and still showing up on
campus for tests. His professor at MTSU, Beverly Keel, who served as dean of the College of Media and Entertainment, described him as someone who wasn't just intelligent academically or business-wise, but someone who understood people. And that ability to understand human emotions is probably one of the biggest reasons his music connected so deeply with millions. Because when you know how people feel, you know exactly how to create something that reaches them. The work never slowed down, and neither did the impact. Tay Keith continued creating records with artists like Lil Baby and Gunna on Never Recover featuring Drake. He contributed to Beyoncé's Homecoming live album by producing a version of Before I Let Go. And if you ever needed proof that his talent went far beyond one corner of hip-hop, the fact that Beyoncé trusted his production says everything about the level he was operating on. He worked with Yo Gotti, Moneybagg Yo, and Gunna. He connected with Sexy Red on Pound Town, which became his first chart appearance as a lead artist. He contributed to Megan Thee Stallion's 2024 album. He produced Just Us for Jack Harlow and other major records moving into 2025. And one of his final public Instagram posts on May 7th of that year was promoting Chris Brown's song Call Your Name, featuring Sexy Red and Glorilla. Right until the end, he was still creating, still excited about music, and still giving the world the sound that had defined his entire life. But when you step back and look at the full picture, the numbers tell a story that is almost unbelievable. 11 top 10 hits on the Billboard Hot 100, 4 #1 records, 6 #1 songs on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs chart during this decade alone, a record for that category. In 2025, Forbes recognized him on their 30 Under 30 music list alongside his business partner Cambrian Strong for their company and label Dirtamas. He won Producer of the Year at the BMI Awards in 2024. He even received an honorary professor title from his former university. For a producer, those achievements represent a level of success that very few people in the industry ever reach. But the reason Tay Keith was able to remain powerful across different eras of rap is something people don't talk about enough. Staying relevant as a producer might be one of the hardest challenges in all of music. Artists can disappear for a while and return with a story, but producers don't always get that opportunity.
The moment your sound stops matching the culture, the calls slow down and the opportunities disappear. The production game moves fast, and it is brutally competitive. But Tay Keith stayed working. He stayed evolving. He stayed connected to where hip-hop was heading, while never forgetting the Memphis foundation that created him. That wasn't luck. That came from discipline, business intelligence, and the mindset he carried from South Memphis all the way to the top. But this story isn't only about awards, chart positions, or credits. This is about what Tay Keith represented to Memphis, because he carried the sound of a city that had often been overlooked by the mainstream and brought it directly to the biggest stages in music. Memphis has always been a powerhouse when it comes to blues, soul, gospel, and hip-hop. But when the industry talks about influential music cities, Memphis has often stood in the shadow of places like New York and Atlanta. Tay Keith helped change that conversation. When your production becomes the foundation behind major Travis Scott records and major Drake records in the same year, you are not just representing yourself anymore. You are representing every young producer in Memphis sitting in a bedroom wondering if the world will ever hear what they created. Tay Keith answered that question. He answered it with chart-topping records, major awards, industry respect, and a name that every major artist wanted attached to their music. Now, we have to talk about what happened on June 18th, 2026, because this is the part nobody saw coming. There
was no public warning. There was no long period where people watched him struggle. There was no sign that the culture was preparing for a loss like this. Tay Keith was active. He was working. He was still sharing music. He was still only 29 years old, with what should have been decades of creativity ahead of him. And then the news arrived like a shockwave. Metro Nashville police were called to his apartment on Martin Street in Nashville that afternoon for a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found Bratavius Chambers unresponsive. He was gone. I am only 29 years old. Nashville police later released an official statement confirming his passing and making it clear that foul play was not suspected. The department explained that the case remained unclassified while waiting for autopsy results, meaning no official cause of death had been announced. And we're not going to do what the internet often does in moments like this. We're not going to create rumors or fill in blanks that haven't been confirmed. Tay Keith and his family deserve facts, they deserve respect, and they deserve space during a moment this painful. But what we can talk about is what happened next. Because the second the news reached the public, the reaction from the hip-hop world was immediate, emotional, and honestly heartbreaking to witness. Blockboy JB, his brother in the journey, his day one friend, the person who had known him since they were teenagers in Memphis trying to figure out their futures, was one of the first people to react. He shared a broken heart emoji on his Instagram story. Then he posted an old picture of the two of them when they were young. But then he shared something that completely stopped people in their tracks. It was a screenshot of their phone history, showing that he and Tay Keith had talked every single day. Every single day. Under that screenshot, Blockboy wrote, "Damn, cuz, you just hurt me bad. We talked every day. You didn't tell me you was leaving." And that message hit differently, because this wasn't just an artist paying respect to a producer. This was someone grieving a person who was part of his everyday life. These two didn't just make music together. They grew up together. They came from Memphis together. They built their names together. And they stayed connected all the way to the end. Losing someone you spoke to every single day is a different kind of pain. And now one of those two friends was gone far too soon. Hit Boy, another Memphis producer who had been around Tay Keith since the early days of their journey, shared his own emotional reaction, saying he didn't even have the words. And that says a lot, because this connection went back years before the fame, before the major records, before anyone outside Memphis knew their names. Joey from Gotham Hip Hop, who also had a personal relationship with Tay Keith, shared that the news genuinely made him sick to his stomach. He described him as one of the most influential producers of the last decade and explained that Tay was one of the first major figures to reach out, simply to show support, not for business, not because he needed anything, just because that was the type of person he was. And that part matters, because sometimes the biggest impact someone leaves isn't just the records they create, it's the way they make people feel. Even streamers and content creators who were live when the news broke were trying to process it in real time, visibly shocked on camera. The entire online hip-hop community felt this loss together, publicly and instantly. But the bigger question now is what this means moving forward. Because Tay Keith wasn't someone looking back at his best days. He wasn't a producer who had already finished his run and stepped away.
He was still active, still creating, still working with artists, still building his company and preparing opportunities for the next generation. His final public posts showed someone who was still fully invested in music and still excited about what was ahead. At only 29 years old, he was standing right in the middle of what could have been another incredible chapter of his career. The records he could have created, the artists he could have helped elevate, the young producers watching him and learning how to balance creativity, business, and integrity. That is a huge part of what the culture lost. And there's another part of Tay Keith's legacy that deserves way more attention, what he represented for the producers coming after him. Because imagine being a young beatmaker sitting alone in a bedroom, questioning whether your passion is ever going to become something real. Sometimes you need to see someone from a place like yours break through. Someone who came from the same struggles, the same environment, and reached the highest level possible. Tay Keith became that example for an entire generation of Southern producers. He proved you didn't need to come from Los Angeles, New York, or Atlanta to dominate the industry. You didn't need someone to hand you an opportunity. You didn't need to erase where you came from to succeed. You could take the sound of Memphis, the darkness, the emotion, the weight, the atmosphere, and bring it to the biggest stages in the world. That was the blueprint he created. A real example that you can honor your roots and still reach the top. And the company he built with his partner Cambrian Strong was an extension of that same mindset. Tay Keith wasn't only focused on having a successful career for himself. He was thinking about building something bigger, a structure, a system, a platform that could use everything he learned about production, ownership, and the music business to help develop the next wave of talent. The people around him were not random industry connections. Many were people from his own world, people he trusted, people who had been part of his journey. His team, his creatives, and the people helping him build were connected through that same Memphis and MTSU foundation. He understood something important from the beginning. A hit record can create a moment, but a real business creates a legacy. That type of vision is something the culture doesn't always recognize immediately, but it matters. Because what disappeared on June 18th wasn't just a producer with hit records. It was a builder. It was a creator. It was someone actively working on something that was meant to last beyond one song, one album, or one era. His legacy will always include the incredible music he helped create, but his biggest achievement might be proving that a producer can become much more than a name in the credits. A producer can become a cultural force. He proved that the person creating the sound behind the artist can become just as recognizable as the voice delivering the lyrics. He showed the world that Memphis didn't just have a style that could survive outside its own streets. It had a sound powerful enough to dominate the global conversation around what modern hip-hop could become. He showed that you could stay humble, move quietly, understand business, understand people, and still become one of the most respected names in your entire field. His professor at MTSU described him as someone with incredible vision, not only for music, but for the industry, culture, and the people around him. And that ability to see the bigger picture is exactly what separated Tay Keith from being just another producer with hits. He was a creator who helped shape an entire era. At the end of the day, the story of Tay Keith is not only about the way it ended. Even though his journey was cut short, this is the story of a kid from South Memphis who opened a music program at 14 years old and decided he was going to teach himself everything from the ground up. The kid who uploaded beats to DatPiff before he had a major cosign, before the world knew his name, before anyone was waiting for his next move. The kid who met his closest friend in Memphis and built a career alongside him that nobody could have predicted at the beginning. The same person
Went to college, earned his degree, and at the same time created one of the most unbelievable production runs hip-hop has ever seen. The person who built his own company, collected awards, earned recognition, and created a legacy while never forgetting the city and the people that shaped him. That is not just a story of loss, that is a story of achievement. That is one of the most powerful journeys hip-hop has witnessed, and it deserves to be remembered with the same passion, the same intensity, and the same energy that Tay Keith brought every time he stepped into the studio. Because that energy was different. It was authentic, and it is something the culture will never be able to recreate. Right now, the entire rap community is mourning. The tributes are continuing to pour in. The memories are being shared. The old pictures are coming back across timelines. And every single person reacting, whether it's Block Boy JB expressing pain in the middle of the night, or a producer who only crossed paths with him briefly saying the news hurt deeply, they are all responding to the same reality. Tay Keith was someone who truly mattered. Not only because of the records he created, but because of the way he carried himself, the way he treated people, and the way he represented Memphis everywhere he went. Every time that legendary tag plays before a song, whether it's Sicko Mode, Nonstop, Look Alive, or any other record connected to his name, that is a piece of Tay Keith still speaking. That is South Memphis echoing through speakers around the world.
That is Bertavius Lakeith Gigbers, the young kid who sat down with FL Studio and decided he was going to figure this out, reminding everybody that the dream was real from the beginning. The music was always bigger than the moment. The impact was always bigger than the numbers. Rest easy, Tay Keith. The sound you created will continue to live, the tag will continue to ring, and hip-hop will never forget what you gave to the culture.